Good evening, and welcome to the pilot version of my new podcast endeavor, which I'm calling People I Think You Should Know with Huckleberry Starnes. I'm your host, Huckleberry Starnes, and the idea behind this was that in my previous job, I used to travel the country to a lot of secret and semi-secret locations, and as soon as I got done with work, I used to find the most divey bar I could in the vicinity and plant myself at the bar and chat up whoever else was there. And I have met a really interesting collection of fascinating people, and as well as my travels through my life. And I think going through COVID, I've had to give up my dive barring, and I've become a little more accustomed to video chatting and all that. And I thought it would just be a good time to maybe call on some of the people that I've met over the years that I enjoy chatting with, and I think maybe other people would enjoy learning about, as well as some people that, like our guest tonight, that I don't actually know. But he's somebody that I follow on Instagram. I really admire his work, and I thought, hey, this is somebody I would like to know. And so I thought, what better way than to start a new podcast than start it by interviewing somebody I don't even know and seeing what happens. So thank you for joining in, and hopefully this goes well. We'll see. We'll figure it out together. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get him in. Chain is my guest tonight. He is, again, somebody that I've seen on Instagram who is a chain stitcher. From what I see of his work, I really admire what he's doing. I like his aesthetic. It's completely foreign to me. A lot of what he does, I have to look up the references, but his technical ability is just mind-boggling. So let's go ahead and get him in here, and we can meet him together, and we'll just see where that goes. So bear with me while I bring him in, but thanks so much for joining in. All right.
All right, I think I'm in.
All right. Good evening. Thanks for joining in.
Yeah, oh yeah. I'm first time I've been on a live, so I'm glad I got in and everything's good. Can you hear me and everything?
Absolutely. It's great. It's great.
Not too loud. I got headphones in, so
No,
it's kind of loud.
Nope, it's perfect.
Cool.
Well, thanks so much for joining me and taking a chance on some weirdo who said, let's get together and talk on Instagram.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm down. Yeah, I mean, I don't get a chance really to talk chain stitch too much. I did a podcast a couple years ago. It was really fun, super informative. I mean, you learn so much as you go that obviously be different now, but unfortunately the guy that did the podcast deleted every episode just out of nowhere. So sucks. But it was cool. Yeah, a couple newbies back then were like, oh, super helpful. Like just hearing you talk about, your journey to get where you were at,
Okay.
So.
Well, good. I'm unfortunately, I didn't get to listen to it. Obviously it was deleted. So I'm coming in kind of blind.
Cool.
And I want to get to chain stitch, but first I'd really like to kind of hear about you.
Yeah.
Kind of like a little bit of your backstory, as much as you feel like filling in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my social security number is no. Yeah, so I've been in Portland for say about 14, almost 15 years. From Orange County, California. Moved here just wanting to get away from that. If anybody's from Southern California or kind of knows, they know that it's rough, it's expensive, didn't grow up with very much money. So Portland was it. I got here. So, yeah, I mean, that's that part. You're not where you're from, I guess you can say, but you kind of are. Yeah, so I've been in Portland. I kind of have a background coming from denim, buying, boutique retail type of thing, selling people really expensive clothes that you yourself probably can't afford on that type of wage.
Yep.
But yeah, That, I mean, that definitely leads into chain stitch too. But other than that, yeah, I live a super simple life. I work a 40, 50 hour full-time job aside from what I do on the machine. So, yeah, I'm a busy person. Other than that, um,
Well, do you mind saying what that other job is?
for sure. Yeah, it's in cannabis. I work for like on the back end for a company that makes extracts. They grow cannabis, all that stuff. I'm hands on there. I kind of do a lot of different things, but mostly it's behind a desk. I take care of kind of boring, but at the same time, it's not. I take care of an online system that gets tracked by the state to make sure everybody's doing everything legally. So it's like a seed to sale online tracking system.
Okay.
So that's pretty much what I do, 8 hours a day. I wake up at 5 a.m. to get to work. It's a total real Monday through Friday type job.
Well,
In cannabis.
it's funny because that actually, for me, really informs some of your work, especially some of your earlier chain stitch stuff that you posted.
Yeah, somebody wrote Metric. That is the online system that I use. So
Yep, there
somebody
you go.
cool. Yeah. So that's day to day. That's paycheck. Um, I try to not let that dictate me referring to chain stitch as a hobby. I mean, I don't like that word very much. Hobby's like something that you can pick up and kind of put down at any time and move on. And chain stitch for me and a couple other things are something that I'll probably never put down depending on what I'm doing. So, yeah.
That's something that I really struggle with. So I'd be interested to get your opinion. If you're meeting somebody for the first time and they're asking you what you do and you're referring to like your artisan work, your chain stitch work, how would you describe to that person what you do in the chain stitch realm?
It's hard. That's probably the hardest thing that I feel like us as chain stitchers probably do. Let's face it, not everybody's going to get it. Not everybody's going to know the history and the story. I mean, luckily, some people kind of do now. I'm kind of bright. I'm going to move over. Yeah, so what I explained to them, you know, old craft done on old machines, the olden way. Not that it makes me special or anything, but I don't use an iPad. I don't use Adobe Illustrator. I don't use any of that stuff. I've never learned it or anything. So not that that sets me above anybody or apart or anything, but it's kind of cool being able to tell people that, you're using these old machines and, I'm using paper, pencil, ruler, Sharpie, I can't remember who said it. I want to say it was probably Hoosier built, Jerry Atwood, but somebody back in the day was like, you're tattooing cloth. So not that I use that term, but I kind of say it like that, because, I'm drawing a stencil by hand. Some of it's tracing. That's, something that tattooers do even. Some people, hate on that, whatever it is. But, I like not that I specialize, but what I like is old tattoo flash. That's probably the one thing that I'm drawn towards the most, something that influences me, all that. But yeah, tattooing cloth, doing as close as I can to the olden way as possible. Because that's another thing is, we'd all be so lucky. I know you do a lot of Letterman jackets for whether it be high schools or legit, that's like an official Letterman jacket. But we would all be so lucky if we could get paid the amount we should get paid. And it's these companies that are like, hey, let's do the name of my business on the back of these, jumpsuits or whatever. Like the old chain stitch advertising, order booklets and all that back in the day. So, we would all be so lucky. So, I don't harp on like, oh, I do this the olden time way. It's the only way. Fuck the rest or anything. But because nowadays, when it's 2022, people want different things. You want to push your machine to do different things. Like I did this Grateful Dead sweatshirt recently, and like it was like, I'm happy with the way it turned out, but it was like the dumbest thing to do. That size on that garment with that style thread.
Yeah.
It was like all around just messy, but something that you're trying new things on your machine. You know, you
Yeah.
should be doing that. But
Yeah, I think after a lot of years making stuff for people, for me, I kind of feel like it's making the donuts is how I refer to it, which
I
is
like
there
that.
are some projects that you get to really put your heart and soul into, and there are some other ones that you get to really satisfy your customer, and those can be equally as rewarding. So,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I get lucky because some people ask me sometimes, you know, like, do you make just monotonous, you know, just like boring things or things you don't like making? And, you know, luckily I don't, you know, I've been pretty lucky with that. Not that I say no to everybody. I do turn a lot of stuff down. You know, I've always been like a worrier about like taking on too much. And I've kind of always like put up an imaginary wall to stop myself from, you know, maybe letting people down. But at the same time, I constantly let people down by saying, yeah, like I'd love to make you something. Give me 30 days, give me 60 days or something. In 60 days with my personal life, my work life, the machine, projects that pop up, like, you know, there's certain things, especially now with how far I've come and my skill level now, that it takes, you know, it's getting noticed and people are asking me to do really cool things. And it's like, I can't say no to that.
yeah,
You know, this is something that pays well, it'll be seen, you know, it's what I want to do. They're letting me do whatever I want to do too. And then I, you know, base that up against let's chat in the DMs for 5 hours and go back and forth and
yeah,
all that. You know, I used to do that a lot, and you know, I try to DM in with people as much as I can. You know, it takes a lot of time, but that's the hard part where I've just kind of closed my commissions, but I never really closed them. You know, I think it just kind of weeds out a little bit of that. Because here's a great example. Maybe 2 years ago, I made a really cool piece for a guy down in California who's a tattooer, and DM back and forth. He sent me the art, sent me the jacket, you know, and you know how that is. Once you're there and it's sent in the mail, and it's like whether a deposit's put down or however you do it, it's like you're set in stone. You're going. So I get it there. I'm DMing him back and forth. I'm telling him, hey, so you want this to be this color, this, you know, da 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 da. And he's like, yes, absolutely, just do that. So what was I gonna say? So he asked me to do that, or I asked him if that was okay, and he said yes. I make the piece and send it to him, and he's like, this is absolutely not what I wanted.
Well, how did you handle that?
Oh, like a rook, you know. I felt so bad, even though it wasn't my fault. You know, you can go back and, you know, I guess they call them receipts now. But you go back and you look in your DMs and you're like, what did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong? And no, it's it was very clearly stated. I think I said in the future I want to start doing maybe like video chats, you know, so I can show them a sketch. We can talk face to face because DMs, you know, as we can see. But so the way I handled it was I told him I owed him another piece because I don't
Mm,
think that one, I never saw it. He never posted it. I don't think he wore it. I mean, he could have seam ripped it for all I know, which would have been a nightmare because it was a big, like, thick lined piece on a back, and then the face was totally filled in color, you know.
wow.
So I did him another piece, but he was cool about it. He sent me, I think he sent me $100 when I made him the second one. So I took that as a win. But that's I think the lessons you learn when you're, you know, when you're making art and you're making things, you know, whether you call it a business or not, you know, you're making things for compensation, you know,
Yeah.
custom things. So
Well, how long have you been stitching now?
a little over 5 years.
Okay.
I think I've had my machine for 6, right around there.
And then
Yeah.
you and I have kind of like talked offline. Like for everyone else, basically the way this whole thing kind of came about was I'm obsessed with super clean fill technique. And basically you and Frankenchain were the two people that I'm always looking at as doing really excellent rayon thread, especially that
Yeah.
there's no room for error. Like it's all right there if you look at it.
Yeah.
So I think
Thank you.
like a fanboy, I was sending you messages like, "Oh shit, that looks amazing!" Like, another great piece, and just you were so gracious to kind of actually engage with me, which I don't know if that's what I was looking for, but at the same time, like, I understand I get a lot of messages. I don't try not to spend too much time in my DMs as well, but I appreciate the fact that you actually engaged, and we talked a little bit about some of the things you're working on. We talked about your treasure machine, which from my other live that I do with my buddy Adam, talking about kind of helping people learn chain stitch. I love the fact that you work on a treasure. It's like a super gold star for you. Not that you need any from me, but like I love it.
I think I only know of one other chain stitcher that's kind of doing it on Instagram, kind of like we are, and he's in Japan, which makes sense. He probably, got it where it was made. But yeah, he's the only other one, and I'm slipping on his name right now. Starts with an H, but
it'll come to you later, and I'll throw it up in the post. We'll get him up there, get him called out. That's fine.
Yeah. So Frankenstein's awesome too. So he's the one guy from Russia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. But yeah, rayon thread, that was something I was like most chain stitchers, you jump through so many hoops and so much to get this thing going in the early, stages of it. And with me, when I started, there was information, but there wasn't information, like I tell people like the Ruth Franklin book. So I was never part of the Facebook groups. I kind of stayed away from that, which I think maybe was a benefit, in the long run. But the Ruth Franklin book, I didn't get that till I was like 3.5, almost 4 years in, 3 years in. I had asked maybe on Instagram, like reached out, like, hey, if somebody has this, would you send it to me? No response. Anna, the stonework, the second time around, she emailed it to me. Obviously, and then Stitch Right, scanned it, uploaded everything, the videos and all that. But starting off on early on, it was tough. I think that's why, I love the compliments and anybody saying anything nice about my stuff. I love that. It's awesome. But I personally always think I should be better just because I had such a slow start. I'm probably the only, I don't know, maybe if chain stitcher's in here and wants to jump in and say something, but I'm probably the only chain stitcher that's like full on sock their machine, like punch their machine. My singer, like full on right into the plate, which didn't bend it or anything, luckily. But that's the frustration of it, of not getting it just to even do what you think it should be able to do.
Well, I think the seduction of the machines is that they're so beautiful and simple. But when they quit working, there's only 3 things that could be going wrong. And I know I've spent 3 or 4 hours in front of my machine and called other people to be like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. No,
so
for sure.
I totally get that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I could call it a community 5 years ago. I guess it's definitely a community now. I see from afar, and I'm sure if there's chain stitchers that maybe haven't engaged in, the stuff you guys are doing, they're seeing it from afar. We all appreciate it. What you guys are doing by doing those podcasts is almost helping us because you're giving information that people are like DMing you about on a weekly basis. Like, where do you buy your machine? How do I tell if it's fake? Now it's like, we have a video for that. We have a podcast for that. Please, go listen to that. So it's nice. No, I appreciate you guys doing that.
Well, that means a lot, but it's honestly, I think, rolling up on 2 years for me since I even knew Chain Stitch existed.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And I was the same way, where I collect Western shirts, and I was like, why do some of these look so much cooler than the other ones? And I fell into that rabbit hole, and actually it was Jerry Lee Atwood's video. Somebody did like a really nice production video interview with him. And that was the day I watched it with my wife, and I said, this is it. Like, I'm doing this. I'm finding one of these machines. And I bought one at Thanksgiving 2 years ago, and it sat in the corner for probably 3 months because, like you said, back then, you couldn't find anyone that had good information, and the people that were putting things out. I remember I watched probably every video that Ben put out from World Famous,
Yep.
and it was just him doing stuff, and half the videos back then didn't show the handle. And so I'm trying to figure out how the hell this machine even works.
Oh yeah, and you're like, how's this guy so good at monogramming? Like, I remember watching those too. I mean, that dude's
Yeah.
definitely an OG. But yeah, it's nice being able to start now and getting all that help because yeah, back when I started, and these chain stitchers know because I've reached out and told them over the years, but shit, I'd go on Instagram and like Jason Redwood would post a story of him like actually stitching and he would do something, whether it's like the trick when you're doing outlines of letters and you're going up a T and you do a circle and come back around. Like I didn't know that. Like obviously like now that's what I do every time. So
Yeah.
it was literally like being that like fly on the wall from your cell phone, like watching what these people do and zooming in and studying stitches and like seeing like, oh, because you can't see exactly how they did it, but with your mind, you can follow that stitch and almost kind of see how they did those fills.
Yeah.
It's trial and error. You see shit, you try it. It takes time.
Yeah.
So so all those OG ones that have been doing it for a decent amount of years now, yeah, they taught me how to do it without me hopping in their DMs and asking them how to do everything. Because I had a weird approach, like, not that I am a tattooer or ever have been. Like I said, it's something that inspires me and, that I've been getting tattooed a long time and I'm very interested in it. But I almost approached chain stitching like that, where I thought if I reach out to any of these people that are good at at doing it, they're just going to blow me off. Like, which come to find out long down the line, like they wouldn't have probably did that at all. It depends on what you're asking. How do I thread my machine versus, hey, where do I buy this scrim felt from or thread from? Because that's something Ranger Stitch taught me super early on when I was asking about supplies was, we don't hoard supplies because the more people buying this thread and this scrim felt, it just sets it in stone that these companies will keep producing these products for us. Because the fact that in everyday life, people buy supplies and they have the option to buy them from 30 different companies on 30 different websites or stores is crazy. Like it's people are so used to the Amazon lifestyle where, every once in a while I'll post things and let people know. I know you guys talk about it too, but the fact that we can only buy scrim felt from 2 different companies is crazy. Like we're forced to. And the shipping goes up, the prices go up. It's whatever. That's fine. You got to buy good supplies, but that's something that I always tell chain stitchers that I'm talking to is you figure something out supplies wise, spread it. We're not asking these chain stitchers that have built this business for 8 years to break down how they do everything so that then you can turn around and steal their business.
Right. Well, I think that's the interesting balance is that, first of all, for those big companies, like we're almost more of a nuisance is how I envision it. Because you've got somebody like Neff, the varsity jacket company that probably orders like 30,000 yards of scrim felt. I call them and order 6 and I feel like I'm big time for me, but
I ordered like 6 or 7 altogether last time. I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
It feels good.
But, that's the other thing that I think is really interesting. And I'd be interested to know your approach on it, kind of having this experience, which is, especially now with a lot of people starting out, I feel like there are some people that take the time and respect the craft and do some research and run into a lot of the same walls that we did. So when they reach out, I feel like they're a little more thoughtful. But then you've also got people that basically just kick your front door open of your DMs and are like, yo, tell me how to do this. Like, do you find that as well? And is that's how you're getting contacted?
Definitely. Yeah. And not that I like don't respond or ghost people. I mean, I would never name people or talk trash on anybody, but I mean, in the early days, I might have asked somebody something that was very trivial and they just kind of didn't respond. Didn't hold it to heart really, but I try to think about that when I have people reach out, and it just depends. Like you said, you can kind of read by how they're wording it. Have they bought a machine already? Um, you know, like I said, it's kind of easy now because I can just tell them to go over to the Chainstitch sessions. So.
Great. So can you just do like a call forwarding right to my DMs? Is that what you're trying to set up?
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
But also I get a kick out of helping people sometimes. So because I mean I had an issue that happened with my treasure machine. Right before I started getting it going, I had an issue that my foot was spinning 10 times wider than it ever should. And no matter what setting, my foot being down, my needle bar being up, no matter what, you spin that wheel and that foot was so wide that you couldn't chain stitch on it. And I'm not sure if that's just the way they had it set up from who I bought it from, but that was something that after 5, 6 years, when you're like, all right, like, fuck yeah, like I know this machine, I've ran into all these issues, and I'm like banging my head against the wall once again, all these years later, being like, all right, like machine, you win, like I don't know what to do. So, but Jericho is great. Griffin's great, and he helped me out with that one. Pretty easy. But yeah, I mean, anybody that has one of these machines, like I say, and somebody said to me earlier on when I was trying to learn this machine, they were like, well, didn't you own like a mini motorcycle when you were a kid that you just like took apart and shit? And I'm like, no, what do you expect, dude? Like, I'm from the fucking beach. Like, no, I didn't have a motorcycle. Like, not that I'm totally in left field when it comes to mechanics or anything. I mean, especially with these machines, it's so damn straightforward for the most part that it's metal on metal parts that one works to another. You take off your plate, you can almost see what your machine does from one another, and that right there alone almost helps you out. But I'd say the most tips that I give out to chain stitchers online is I'll say, hey, like, what you're doing is great, but drop all your settings, tighten every setting, throw your needle down. I don't know why everybody's so afraid to do that for so long. Like, they get their machine working and then they just want to like run that setting for the next 2 years on every type of garment or piece of fabric they sew.
Yeah. I struggled with that a lot too. And I think the machine is so mysterious when you get started that when it's perfect and you're in love with your stitch, you don't ever want to touch it again, which is exactly what you're saying. And that's what I struggle with too, is that, I advocate highly for the collar on the needle bar and a spark plug gapper, which lets you always have reliable settings. So I've totally marked my machine so that I can, somebody could come in and untune my machine and I could put it back without ever stitching to check it.
Yeah.
And for me, that was the game changer, to where I'm not afraid to switch to chenille, to chain, to moss, to like do whatever. That's what unlocked the machine for me.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I mean, I almost want to try it. I mean, normally I'm like, I'm pretty good with eyeballing it. I kind of know, but I just did a pop-up event and I've obviously never sewn that many different types of garment weights and different sides of jackets after another, and having to change those settings on the fly like that, it was brutal.
Yeah, tell me about that. How are you handling that at the market? You can't really like blind stitch something like on the customer's garment.
You make jokes, and then they're like maybe not paying attention as much to what you're doing because you're like messing up, but you're like also, like in a good mood and jolly, But no, I had a rough start. The very first garment that I sewed was rough, and then after that, it was pretty smooth. It was my first one. I've never done like an on-site chain stitch event. I mean, it's funny. I see chain stitchers that are not even within 6 months that are actually doing those events, which to me is wild. Like I was
Yeah.
terrified for till last Saturday, So I've turned a couple down over the years that I shouldn't have. I mean, I had more of that offers and stuff coming to me pre-COVID. After COVID, it's been a little more dried up. I mean, I live in a major city that has a downtown area, but we aren't as thriving like Los Angeles and New York, and with all the big stores and the ones that have the money to pay us to come down there and stitch all damn day on all their garments.
Yeah.
So a pop-up was a good tester. It was perfect. It was supposed to be the weekend before it. I just thought I needed a little more time to get some more like ready-made stuff done, just in case. I didn't want anybody to come in and be like, I don't want any of that flash. So I had that option, but switched it to the next week, not realizing it was Labor Day weekend. So I'm like, fuck, now nobody's in town, and a lot of people weren't. So I'm like, all right, good. I mean, it'll be a little slower, a little more practice, maybe it won't be as bad, but what it turned into is it was people wanted like 3 or 4 pieces of flash. And I don't know if you got a good look at the flash that I did. It wasn't, a quick liner. There was fill in there. There were start and stops, multiple lines. Probably like, I'm sure other chain stitchers looked at that and they were like, oh, fuck, like that's cool. But I would never do that,
That's exactly the reaction I had. So it's so funny to hear that was your first one, because when I first started, like if there was a chain stitchers like dummies guide to chain stitching, I thought we were all supposed to start doing markets like within the first 3 months. Like that was the deal. So when you posted your flash, I was like, I already know you're a baller. Like, you're a beast. And I just thought, man, I would never take that because it would take so long. So, so was that your experience? If you were going to do your flash chart again, would you change it from what you did the first one?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, I would definitely do some more simple stuff. I guess it depends on flow. Like if you have a little mellow point and somebody wants something a little more, I see other chain stitchers do it. They're monogramming all day and then somebody will get something that's like a little more elaborate. And I'm like, oh shit. Like either they had time or that person was down to pay the more money or whatever it was. But I would definitely do it a lot more simple. I mean, the flyer is fucking rad. Like I'm gonna frame it and put it up in my house. So I got like something cool out of it like that. Like I'm a nerd. I'm like, almost like overly proud of like the stuff that I do usually, where I could print it up of the photo and frame it or whatever the case, It's cool. It's cool to look at that shit and just be like, I fucking did that. Because as you know, like this shit gets so stressful, it's like a real win sometimes,
And that Glock jacket that you did, that was so tight and everything was so straight and on that kind of like puffy jacket.
Hard.
Yeah,
Super
that piece was amazing.
Yeah, rayon's super tough. I think I was, I'm such a rambler. I apologize. You can just talk over me and I'll stop. But the rayon, I meant to say it earlier, is, it was so foreign to me. I don't think I never used any other rayon. I mean, shit, like I never even touched another chain stitch machine, I don't think I've ever even met another chain stitcher in person, except for maybe Dirty Needle Embroidery, Cody, who's a good friend of mine. And I met him like when I first started, but World Famous is in town. I'm so bad about getting over. I'm actually going to go meet him for the first time next week and chat. And he's going to give me some rayon, actually, that he's got a box. Seems like everybody's got boxes of rayon that they just like shake their head at and wish they didn't purchase, where I'm just like, oh, fuck yeah, throw it on the wall, dude. Like, I'm ready,
You're the rayon god.
So it's funny when you're talking about the moss stitch thing, people are telling you the moss guy. I'm like, well, it could be the rayon guy, But,
we're starting that.
I like that. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun, dude. It looks so fucking cool. It's a little harder to use. I mean, anybody listening that's never used, excuse me, that's never used it, go buy a few spools, like what is it, SM Crystal, I think, has the basic one that I have a lot of. You might know the
That's where you're
name.
buying your rayon from?
No, 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 no. I haven't bought, the only rayon I've bought is I bought this Madeira rayon
Yeah.
because I'll get to that story on why I bought this. But so my treasure machine is my second machine. I've had it, I don't know, you can look on my page. I posted when I bought it. It wasn't that long ago. But I wanted a second machine because I wanted my first machine to do moss and chenille. So I didn't have to look too far. I mean, I did look for a sec where I should have been looking right over my shoulder, but I was asking like the main guys that sell machines, and just it was like a dry spell. They just didn't have any. Oh, we'll have some in 6 months. I was having some issues with my singer at the time, which was also causing me to like blow smoke under my ass and be like, yo, you need to like, or light fire under my ass, where it's like, yo, you need to go buy another machine right now. You can't have your machine go down when you're in the middle of projects and things like that. So I asked all those guys. I mean, luckily, I mean, I'm sure people kind of know him now, but So Mechanic, he's great. He's actually in Vancouver, Washington, which is a stone's throw away from Portland. He didn't have any, Griffin didn't have any. So this one is from a Letterman company that's based here in Portland called Settlemeyers. A good friend of mine, it's a family business that he's now taken over. I want to say he worked there when he was a kid. His grandmother was a chain stitcher and worked for Dean, which is another pretty well-known Letterman company that still operates today, that's also from Portland. But anyway, so Letterman runs in their blood. They still do the high school Lettermans. They're also doing a lot of Lettermans for like streetwear brands like Stray Rats and New Balance or whatever it may be. But it's like I knew this dude had chain stitch machines there, but I just brain farted and didn't ask him when I got my first machine, which was mistake number one, because then I want to say So Mechanic at some point in that time went through there and just cleaned them out, like bought a lot of his supplies, which there's no hate there. I mean, that's the guy's a mechanic, like he needs that stuff. So at least I know where I can go to get parts. But I hit him up just on a whim, and I'm like, hey, like I know you have that treasure machine upstairs at the shop. Like, would you be willing to sell that to me? And he's just like, absolutely. Told me the price, and literally, like, I like laughed, and I was just like, yes, absolutely. I'm coming with cash tomorrow.
Nice.
But it's cool. Yeah. So it's a 1981 model, made in Japan. It was used in-house making patches, chenille patches mostly, on scrim felt for Letterman jackets. It's got a badge that's on top from Seattle where it was getting serviced and getting parts added to it whenever it needed them. So it's got some crazy parts. Maybe I'll send you a couple photos on the back. I guess this would be back or front side of the face that I've never really seen. So I think that's pretty rad. Yeah, I think it's special because it was used here in town, and this the story behind it. I mean, he has a singer. He has an original 30 singer as well, and he wouldn't sell it to me for obvious reasons. So the treasure was the second choice, but also my main choice, and I'm super happy with it. But the cool part about it is all this thread you see right here. I also have another wall right here above my singer that's non-shiny thread, but they gave me 2 giant boxes of thread with this machine. So it wasn't that like I got a fucking fair price for the machine, that it was, I got all this thread with it. And that was like I had no choice but to not start using rayon. I tell people, this is another thing I tell chain stitchers too, is your supplies. Like I think I said in that comment that I left when you guys were talking about my machine was, I've seen some really good work on some what people would consider shitty machines, whether they're newly made or fake made in India or wherever the fuck, all that shit. They still do good work. It's the operator, it's the person behind it that put the time in to learn it. But when it comes to supplies, you can dictate that by your wallet, and you can spend more money and get better supplies. Because I'll tell you right now, the text 13, is it text 13? Text something?
15.
Text 15 thread. I have a grip of it. If anybody wants any, hit me up. You pay shipping, I'll send some out. But I'll tell you right now, that thread, with also like my hesitantness and being scared of this machine, as you should be in the beginning, that fucking thread held me back. That's what I always tell people now, is this thread and some other thread that I got, good thread, it like set me free. Like overnight, I was like, I'm a better chain stitcher. Like it was crazy. Like everything I made after that, I was like, oh, like that's so much better and better and better and better, you know? So
Yeah.
that's what makes the difference.
Yeah, I was telling someone the other day that when I switched from kind of craft felt or fabric swatches to scrim felt, that it's almost like training wheels. The scrim felt is so easy to stitch on. It's very forgiving.
Yeah.
Whereas at the end of the day, when you learn your machine, you can go on satin or lace or 3 layers of denim, but it's more about how you know how to adjust your machine. Whereas the scrim felt or like real chenille yarn, it just looks so much better because of the richness of the material.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a bummer that you can see holes really well in it, but that's about it. Just don't fuck up.
That's exactly right.
People are saying stuff. I haven't been reading it. I'm wearing glasses, but I have bad eyes.
He says 100% right. Quality of threads makes it much better. So yeah,
What's up, people?
I think you touched on it earlier, and I think Show Class and Stitch Right and Ranger Stitch, like there's a group of really great stitchers. Large Lemonade is somebody that I also really like to talk about because her script work is amazing. There's a core group, I think, of people that are accessible and that have always been really generous with me, but that have a playfulness in their work and are always evolving. And I include you, obviously, in that group of people that I just really enjoy watching you, and I respect the fact that you're not a machine. You can see your work in it, your struggles, your evolution, and it's just great.
Yeah,
So.
I'm not afraid to speak on that either, Like, I think I said on that Glock piece, I was like, this is the best piece that I've ever made, this is, or the cleanest piece that I've ever made. This is what fucking years of hard work takes, So, like, you get to that point, it's rough then, like learning any trade. Yeah, it takes a lot of time, and those other chain stitchers, yeah, praise to them for doing cool shit, because like you see a lot in music, obviously you see it in art too, but it's hard to do things that nobody's ever done. I feel like the best artists take from people that they admire, and whether they always take from that or they kind of turn it into their own, either way, like that's why I tell those chain stitchers all the time, like I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for like watching you work, so I always give the nods where they're due, but
yeah. Well, to that point, part of the whole concept of me wanting to talk with you and this sort of endeavor is to introduce other people, the people I think they should know. And I think in the spirit of that, I would love to know if there are some people that you think that me and anyone listening to this should know about that maybe we don't.
Oh, absolutely. Dude, I'll scream it from the rooftops. My good buddy David down in California, he's a musician. He goes by DCR Public. So it's at DCR POLLOCK. He released a full-length record last year called The Dogs Off. Hands down my favorite record put out last year. I've burnt that thing. I've listened to it so much. He's a beautiful human being. I finally got to meet him. That's what's funny about this COVID shit and being like an artist online of some sort. If you know, I hate to say we're half-ass artists, I guess, but you know, connecting with people online through COVID's been great. I've met so many people that it's like I've gotten to know these people, but I've never met them, whether it be because they're not touring or whatever the case may be. So it's been really cool meeting people now, but beautiful human being, writes amazing music, and I just don't think enough people, it's not put in enough people's faces to listen to, you know, so I'm always trying to shove it in people's faces.
Nice. Well, I'll definitely check that out, and I will post it in the notes.
Good.
For anybody that's listening to this, definitely check that out. And yeah, I really want to thank you for your time and your generosity with having me inside your studio. I have to say, you know, it's nerve-wracking sometimes to meet someone that you admire so much. Like, is it going to be a letdown, or are you going to be the person that I expect you to be? And you have really lived up to every expectation that I had. And again, thank you so much.
Yeah, I was just rambling. I don't even know what I said. It's a blackout. But yeah, it was great talking. Thanks for having me. Thanks for all the kind words. And like I said, thanks for what you guys are doing. It's great for the community. It's great for everybody. Yeah, it's cool to be a part of it.
Well, I appreciate it. And let me know when you figure out that call forwarding DM thing so that I can move all my messages over to somebody else.
I got you. I got you.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a great night, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks, dude. Take care, guys.
All right. Good night.
Good night.